John 15, 9 through 11. And I tell you guys, I'm very transparent with you. And I've told you, I've explained to you before, one of the reasons is I have not been able to really help my emotions because I've been recovering and very weak. And I passed a milestone this past week, and I got my weight back to a very special number. It took me a long time to get there, and I'm so excited. So you've heard me say, I mean, I have my struggles, and you guys struggle right along with me, but I am in a really good place. And people, during the week say, wow, you look like something is different, although I got this crick in my neck. But I'm working that out too. But what excites me, and the lesson today is Lovejoy, because you can't separate one from the other. And so much of life is a choice. And if we don't have the right attitude, and so I love, we're getting the school started, and the lessons in chapel have just been great, and some good practical things of setting this course right from the beginning. So, and I love the psalm you read this morning, and then the songs that we sing. But I'm going to give you a couple of definitions. And again, I like the resource that we have, the technology that we enjoy now. You could really learn a lot if you just pay attention. But happiness versus joy. And I just put that in on a search, happiness versus joy. But happiness, if you boil it down, happiness is a feeling and joy is a state of being. We've heard that before. Well, James says, count it all joy when you go through various trials. I learned a long time ago, when you set a goal, you have to go through this process. And the learning process can be very frustrating. And I just saw this little blurb, every once in a while I put these images on the screen, and then these ads pop up. And one of them was about learning. It just happened to be learning the piano. And it said, most people quit. And I was hoping Mary was going to be here. I need her on this. She's our music instructor. But they say most people quit. They want to learn this instrument, but they just want to enjoy it. They don't want to learn all the technical stuff. And he said, why do people quit? Because as you start learning something, then challenges, you get challenged. We had an interesting, I don't know if you heard this, Alice, in our study on Friday, but we had a guest with us, and she commented about not wanting to really study just yet because I'm not sure I'm ready to be accountable. Did you catch that? Yeah, I think it was kind of after we were having a discussion, and I was like, that's very transparent. That's very revealing. A lot of times we think things, but we don't say it out loud. But let me share with you what I mean. And there was some great lessons this week, and kind of, there's a song that was kind of in my head, When My Love for Christ Grows Weak. And we have these terms, love-hate relationship. And we even see that in the psalm that was read this morning. I hate evil, but I love righteousness. We have this love-hate relationship where a lot of times when we grow, when we have a newborn baby, we just sang about the newborn baby, and babies just exude love. And we just can't help but love them, and we can't take our eyes off them. And then, but as we grow, and I said this before, as we grow up and everything's exciting and new, what's that, and then why that? Well, as we get older, everything is about us, and everybody wants us to do well and succeed, and they're all supportive. And then I had a motivational speaker who used to say, and then we get out in the big bad world. And everything that we thought and was, the world's going to be so excited to accept me. And then systematically, our dreams get taken away. The things that we wanted, we thought we were going to do, don't happen. We get stuck in a rut, and our love grows cold. And it can happen in relationships. We start out in a relationship and we love, it's exciting, it's new, it's fresh. And then a lot of times, and I said this to our guest, the things that we thought were so cute and adorable in the beginning, now they just drive us crazy. And it's like, somebody said, like nails on a chalkboard. Those cute things aren't cute anymore, and our love grows cold, and it turns sometimes even into hate or bitterness. How do we fix that? What's the solution? Well, James tells us, count it all joy. Joy is a state of being, and that's a choice. And God gives us a choice. But I'm also going to say, I love that he's the fount of every blessing. Love comes from God. All this today begins and ends with the love of God. So this love, joy, you can't have one without the other. Let me tell you, and again, I just put this in the search. The Bible communicates 4 unique forms of love through 4 Greek words. I'm not going to give you the words, but in English, the word is love. But in the original language, you have the words for love are romantic love, family love, brotherly love, and God's divine love. The biblical definition of love is sacrificial. A love that gives first and accepts or expects nothing in return. Love is the essence of God's character and the defining quality of his selflessness, life-giving relationship with humanity. That's a whole lot. This biblical love, as we're going through Genesis now, and we're laying this foundation, and it was brought up this morning, John 3:16, God so loved the world. It all came out of love. And if we're going to grow in love and experience joy, and we can't have one without the other, when we're loved and we feel loved, we can't help but have joy. And when we have joy, we're better at expressing love. So if somebody comes in and they're, what's going on? And I mentioned to you, we just had a memorial service this week for the one who really led the whole deaf ministry out of Sunset, passed away last week. But I always loved, I would come into his class and he would say, Tom, the class wants to know what's troubling you. And I said, what do you mean? Nothing. I feel great, And they said, well, they read the expression on your face. And I mentioned that throughout the week, right? We don't always account for our face because we're used to using words to communicate. And some of you watch chapel, you'll see the signer, and the good signers, they have this, they're very expressive because we're communicating in a different form. So how do we get this love that we can express and have this joy? Well, here's what I came up with this happiness. And again, this was just on an internet search. Happiness is a state of well-being that depends on external factors, such as people, things, or events. Happiness is often temporary and conditional. Joy is a feeling that comes from within, regardless of the circumstances. Joy is more consistent and lasting, and is based on making peace with who you are, why you are, and how you are. Isn't that interesting? When I started out in a business venture, I was so excited about the opportunity that I had. And it was the first business that I chose, because the first business I got into was kind of a family business. I didn't really choose it. It chose me. And I did it, and I enjoyed the life, but it wasn't me. When I made the decision to change careers and start another business opportunity, I remember having many conversations with kind of a partner of mine, and we started out, we were here in the office park in Farmington, and we used to dream and scheme, as you say, through the night. And one of the things I realized early on, if I were going to be successful, and truly have a life that I enjoy living, I'm not going to base my success on reaching the goal, but I had to learn how to enjoy the process. Because life is too short, as we say, especially as we get older. It's too short to say, I'll be happy when. No, and Paul tells us he learned it's a secret in being content in all things. How are we going to have this joy? It comes from God. And so I wanted to share this lesson with you. It's in John 15, and it's a familiar passage. If you were looking at John chapter 15, and it's the discourse that Jesus has in the first 17 verses about the vine and the branches. And Linda, for the outline, if I were just doing a very simple outline of the first 17 verses of John 15, I would say I would break it into these three sections. Number one, abide in Jesus' word. We're going to look at the text, but abide in Jesus' word, you bear fruit. Then the second part of this is abide in Jesus' love, you have joy. Abide in Jesus' love, you have joy. And then the third aspect is abide together in love, you have fellowship. And it's God so loved the world, he made us out of his great love, and his desire is for this fellowship, and fellowship with God is life. And he is the Redeemer that redeems us for life. So if we take this section by section, but it's all contained in the three verses that were just read, 9 through 11. So if you look at those verses, 9 through 11 again, John 15, 9, as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you, abide in my love. And again, I love the word abide. I love words. Preachers love words. Ecclesiastes, the great preacher, Solomon, he says, a word rightly fitted, and he compares it to a setting, setting something and fixing it, like in a jewel setting. Rightly fitted brings joy. But we have this word abide. What is abide? It's being steadfast. It's being in it. I might say immersed in it. Abide in my love. Verse 10, if you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that and that your joy may be full. So if you go back how Jesus starts this, and by the way, in the context here, Jesus is talking to his apostles. This is a discourse on how Jesus is going to communicate through his apostles this gospel message to the world. And the apostles were going to take this out. So he starts out in this chapter 15 by saying, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Now listen, every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that does not bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. So, again, the very first part of this, abide in Jesus' word, and you bear fruit. And in Matthew 11, so let me give you Jesus' words on this in another place. In Matthew 11, 27 through 30. All things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Verse 28. Again, very familiar verse. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And what you see Jesus doing, if you know what a yoke is, and so the familiar picture they would have where you yoke oxen together. So they'll take two oxen and they'll have this board that basically, it's a harness type structure, and it connects them together so that they can increase the power, right, when they're yoked together. And it's the image that Jesus says, listen, and you read this from last week, Sam. Who is man that you're mindful of him? Jesus says, I know this life is hard. So he says, come with me. I will take the burden. Be yoked together with me. Share in this. When and sometimes I don't think we completely, or it takes a long time to get this. Yes, I want you, God, in my life. And yes, I surrender all to you, as we sung this morning. But I still want to be in control. I still want to control everything. So we have to learn. Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches. You can do nothing without me. I was thinking, and I love this, Irene, is back in Mark chapter 9. It was when Jesus goes to heal this demon-possessed boy, the father says, if you can do anything, and Jesus, it's in Mark chapter 9, 14 through 29, but Jesus said, if I can, and he cast the demon out. He says, yes, if you believe. And that was where he says, yes, I believe. Now help me in my unbelief. Right? And that's the way we come to this. Yes, God, I believe you. I'm convinced you are God. But now help me. Well, he says, let's be yoked together. But now he says, help me in my unbelief. Well, the disciples came to him after and they said, well, why couldn't we do this? And therein the question reveals the answer. Now, Jesus says in Mark that this requires prayer. In Matthew's account of the same thing, he says, he says both in both places, boy, you have little faith. But in Matthew, he says, if you have faith like a mustard seed, you could do great things, as Ricardo shared with us a few weeks ago. But could it be the reason they couldn't accomplish this? Because they were trying to do it themselves when only God can do it? Remember, as we're going through Exodus, in our study of Exodus, what is God doing with his people Israel, but trying to get them to trust him? You're not making it on your own, he says. I'm going to give you these precepts, do them and you live. But we struggle with that. But Jesus says, I'm going to come with you. But you got to abide in him. And as you abide in him, he says your love will grow. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen this done, but this idea of this triangle. They do it in marriage workshop, right? If you want to grow closer together in your marriage, in your partnership, the only way you can grow closer together is by you focusing on growing your relationship closer with God. As you get closer to God, you naturally get closer to each other. Have you ever heard that? Have you ever seen that diagram? It's pretty fascinating. When you try to please each other, and you do that and you get farther from God, your relationship gets, okay, I'm not going to explain it real well. Anyway, I always thought that was great, but that's true in any relationship. You say, Tom, why are you going to a marriage workshop? Because it's relationships. I just love it, right? I don't have to be married to understand relationships. You want to bear fruit, you got to know God's love. And it's revealed in the things that he tells us, but we need to get to know that. We have to abide in his word. The second part is abide in Jesus' love. So, again, in verse 10, John 15:10, if you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love. In other words, so this definition of love, this biblical definition of love, is not this feeling, this emotional feeling, but it's always this idea of helping. And we're even reading, as you know, in the creation account now, as God created man and he creates woman and they're helping each other. The idea is to help. We're at our best when we can help others. In fact, it's the great example from Jesus, but Paul tells us in Philippians 2, 1 through 4, if there's any encouragement in Christ, any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit, any affection and sympathy, complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interest of others. God created us to help one another. And when we do, we grow in love. When we truly care for others. Because the common phrase in relationships, I love them, but I don't always like them. So that, you know, that's, and if we're not careful, if we don't learn how to grow in love, then that dislike can fester and grow as well. But if we grow in love, to truly love. And I was thinking, you know, as we sang this song, I marked it because he lives, all fear is gone, because I know. We talked about that last week. K-N-O-W, I know. Perfect love casts out fear. So as we grow in love, our capacity to love increases and the joy comes. And just a side note, I'm fascinated by this. And I think of this as I was, you know, as this was rolling around my head. Pets. Why do we love pets so much? Their love for us never changes. Isn't that amazing? Well, you have a cat. You don't count. I got a good look. But right, our pets love us no matter what, no matter how we mess up during the day and we come home and that precious child, Sylvie, is there waiting. And you cannot help, right? But say, oh my goodness, you love me anyway. But we, who have a capacity for love, we sacrifice a whole lot of joy getting focused in the wrong place and not learning how to come back to the source of love. Abide together in love is the last part of this. And you have fellowship. Jesus said in verse 15:11 of John, these things I have spoken to you that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be full. And in our study of 1 John, we'll see 1 John 1, 3 and 4. And again, same John who wrote this in the Gospel of John writes this letter. And John, by the way, what a great example, illustration of the transformative power of the love of God in the life of John, who starts out as the son of thunder and becomes known as the apostle of love. And in his letter, last apostle living, he kind of gets the last word on this. In 1 John 1, 3 and 4, that which we have seen and heard we proclaim also to you, so that you too may have fellowship with us. And indeed, our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. And we are writing these things so that our joy may be complete. If you're following along in your version, is it your joy or is it our joy? Yes. Our joy. When we have fellowship together, our joy is complete. You say, really? But I don't like these people. Get over it, God says. We can change. We can choose. We can make this choice. In 2 Peter, there's this list. It's 2 Peter chapter 1, 5 through 8. And depending, again, on your version, how we translate these words, ESV renders this virtue. In other versions, is goodness. But it all begins and ends with love. No matter where you go, in Ephesians or any letter when they're expressing this. But Peter puts it this way, 2 Peter 1:5, for this very reason make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue or goodness. And virtue with knowledge. And we've gone through this before, and I say this is kind of a natural progression. Knowledge with self-control, self-control with steadfastness, steadfastness with godliness, godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love. For if these qualities are yours and increasing, they keep you from being ineffective or unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. He says we got to grow in these things. In other words, they don't come natural. But as we grow in them, we truly do look at people different around us. So where our heart becomes like God's heart, God so loved the world. Because remember, Paul tells us in Romans that, while we were still sinners at the right time, Christ died for us, demonstrating God's endless love. So, as this time together is recorded in John, really starting in maybe John, how do you start? John 13, Jesus washes their feet, and then he begins this instructional time with them. John 14, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. How do we know Jesus? How can we know these things? Because you've been with me. You see me. Trust me, he says. In John 15, he's talking about the vine and the branches. In 16, he promises the Spirit. In 17, we say, in John chapter 17, we have what's called the high priestly prayer. Jesus prays. And he says this in John 17:3, and this is eternal life, that they know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. But now I am coming to you, and these things I speak in the world, that they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves. If we have the love of God, and we grow in that love by abiding in his word, then we experience joy, because it's a challenge. The world is all about stealing your joy. Are they good at it? And it's not to say that we don't have joyful times or happy times. But a lot of people just chase happy things rather than getting to this love and joy that God alone provides. So we have plenty of opportunities to come together, to abide in his word, plenty of resources. If we abide in his word, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. As we abide in his word, we'll bear fruit, which is what God wants. Abide in his love and connect with the love of God, and you'll have joy. But as James says, you must count it all joy. You got to make a choice. I'm going to go through the process. And that changes everything. And I use the example again, how quick we can change our emotional state. It's pretty remarkable. No matter how tired you are or whatever you're going through, and you're trying to get home and you hear your name called on the radio, and all of a sudden they'd say, you just won $1 million. And you have 24 hours to come and pick it up. You got to come back downtown. And you just left downtown. And you just fought your way through traffic. And my question to you is, when you get the news, are you going to wait till tomorrow to go get your check? Or are you going to turn around with a smile on your face and enjoy the traffic as you drive? And what capacity do we have to change in a moment? Just with the addition of some information. God is wonderful that way. Gives us such an amazing ability and capacity. And over, as even in the Psalm today, he tests us. And they said last week, to know him, he says he's going to tell us, test us, and then help us mature through, and then give us the joy of recognition, of confirmation. So, abide in his word, you bear fruit. Abide in his love, you have joy. And abide together in love, and you have fellowship. And fellowship together and fellowship with God is life. If you don't know this life, if you don't know the love of God, especially if the weight of the world is pressing down on you. Because the problem is, when things are going bad, we start to spiral. And then we want to withdraw. We do all the things we shouldn't do when things are going bad, and we start spiraling down. And how do you break out of that spiral? And sometimes people say, well, you have to hit bottom before you can come back. Well, we used to talk about this a lot in the mission field. When I was in China, it's easy to get a feeling of isolation. And they say you need to be renewed. And we would have various visitors come and visit us, and we'd have this fellowship time together, and it just lifts us up. So we had a visitor on Friday, and it was just a great experience. And this is where I need to be. So if you don't know the love of God, that's where it all starts. It's the fount of every blessing. And when we accept that love of God, now he increases our capacity. And as we grow, we will bear fruit, and we will know joy. And I want to thank you guys for bearing with me and being with me through this process, because I never thought I'd get to where I am. And I'm so excited. But one of the things is because you've given me an opportunity through the work here to just be immersed in the love of God and his word, and to do all these things. And I hope I'm a good example to you and motivate you to want to know this joy. If something's weighing you down or you don't know this love of God, that's what Q said when he said we have this song of encouragement, and this is our time, an invitation of encouragement.